My story is called The Monster. Before I turned 20 years old, I started suffering anxiety in the form of panic attacks. I experienced a racing pulse, a fear of suffocation, and in the words of Mayo Clinic, a sense of impending doom. I eventually received help, mostly with prescribed medication. In my 40s, I came up with a representation that I called the anxiety monster. I viewed the monster as something outside of myself. I felt dependent on medication to keep the monster in the cage. When he escaped, all hell broke loose. My nervous system was thrown into high alert, and I experienced panic. I felt like I didn't have control of my own body and was subjected to the whims of the heartless monster. My contempt was so strong for the monster that I told one of my sisters that I wanted to kill the anxiety monster. Just last year, I heard a talk given by a life coach that had great success in helping people deal with chronic pain. That pain could be emotional, as in anxiety or depression. I decided to meet with her with just a flicker of hope that she might have something to offer. Thank you all for your patience. With time, I came to trust my coach with many personal details, some never before shared with any other person. I told her that I hadn't suffered a full-blown panic attack in years. She asked me where anxiety was located in my body. I told her when stressed, I have a nervous tightening of my throat, which I called the hard swallow. She asked me how I felt towards it being there. I said it's really not a big deal, not nearly as bad as panic. She asked me again how I felt having this sensation in my body. I replied with annoyance in my tone. I wish it would go away and never, ever come back. But let me explain. My annoyance was in most part due to her asking what I thought was a trivial question when I had much more complaining to do. I had never looked at the monster because I didn't want it to have the satisfaction of receiving my attention. But I knew he was ugly and reckless, much like gremlins when they ate after midnight. I imagined him with fangs, claws, and a hideous appearance. He had at least one wart on his nose, like a witch in Disney's Snow White ride. My coach suggested that I pay attention to the monster. I thought that idea was quite ridiculous, and I was resisting the very idea. I had to admit, though, that some of her recommendations had proven to be a little bit worthwhile. With great reluctance, I decided to take the first step. In my mind, and with unmasked disgust in my voice, I ordered the monster to come into the community room of my spiritual center, because I was in charge. I demanded that he back his ass into the corner by the fridge and stay there. Further, I threatened that he better not utter a peep, move a muscle, or even make a face. I call that step tolerance, but it was barely so. Later on, I was sitting at a table in the same room on Potluck Sunday. I commanded the monster with a menacing tone to come to the table, while threatening that he better be perfectly still and absolutely quiet. I call that step acceptance, although it was hardly that. I'm not sure why, but for the first time ever, I glanced at him. I was shocked to see him cringing in fear of me, knowing how I hated absolutely everything about him. I was even more surprised to realize I felt compassion. The first time I told a friend of this experience, my voice cracked with emotion. Later, I felt silly that as a senior citizen, I was having feelings for an imaginary monster. Last summer, I was telling a friend about the anxiety monster. She gently asked me if it was really a monster. I said he wasn't nearly as scary as I originally thought, but a monster nonetheless. I learned over time that the monster was very well intentioned. The panic he caused was my fight or flight response out of concern he had for my safety. That could be danger from a wild animal in pursuit, or simply being disrespected, or even embarrassed. I finally admitted that the monster was a part of me. That is my anxiety monster. I have done much soul searching in the past few years, and the feelings for my monster have progressed from borderline hate to tolerance, beyond acceptance, friendship, and ultimately love of this part of me that was so fearful. In reality, my monster is actually cute. Further, he's soft and cuddly. As gremlins go, he is like Gizmo, rather than the gremlins that ate after midnight. He goes with me everywhere and always has my back. I believe he represents my inner child and wants me to be the adult. I have a new visual of him as Sesame Street's Cookie Monster. Now I refer to him with affection as Cookie. And that ridiculous suggestion that I give some attention to my monster came from Ahava's own Dr. Andrea Moore. Thank you.